All right, so this bathroom I know is just a bathroom, but to me this is where I would spend hours. When other kids were like in class, I would feel contaminated, I'd feel dirty, and I'd go into this bathroom. I would turn on the water, and then I was always pumping so much soap. It wasn't like this, I remember it was like that pink industrial soap. So then I'd have to do my ritual, and I can't do all of it because I have sleeves, but just imagine what I'm doing now. I would do it up until about my elbow. So I'd sit there and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my God. This is just too much, dude. Like, it just really brings me back to how I was. My name is Trondsen. Hear my story. So I grew up in Southern California. I was born and raised kind of in the Long Beach area, but lived in different cities around that. My parents got divorced when I was young, and I just remember being a happy kid. Going to kindergarten and doing really well on my handwriting in cursive and getting a gummy bear because I always beat the other kids. So I just remember being a happy kid. I would say one of my earliest memories of knowing that something was different about me is I used to play freeway. I was obsessed with cars. I could tell you what make and model every car we passed. So my parents would buy me little cars like the Hot Wheels, and I would line them up in 4 rows, kind of like a freeway, and then have to be a thumb apart. But I remember being so fixated as a kid to make sure they were lined up perfectly and the 4 lines were parallel, and like each of them had about a thumbprint in between. And if anybody knocked them over, or if they rolled over, if they became imperfect, I would throw fits and cry. So little things like that I can definitely remember were some of the starts that, hey, I don't think everything with me is quite normal. I remember the worst that it ever got was when I was a senior. I'd kind of angered my mom, and sort of as like a thank you, I was like, okay, I'm gonna clean the house and get it looking nice. And something in my brain just switched, and I spent hours cleaning, moving couches, vacuuming corners, wiping walls, wiping ceilings, cleaning material, and all over the house. And instead of that making me feel terrible, I just couldn't stop. I just felt so ramped up, and I just kept going and going and going. And I remember my mom coming home just thinking I must have hired a maid. So that was when it really just kind of clicked in me, and nothing ever was the same after. Although I also had outward compulsions with the cleaning and the checking, there was a lot of mental rituals that would happen. So I'd constantly be replaying things in my head over and over. I would try to remember things perfectly or figure things out, focus on something. So now not only did I feel kind of exhausted from outwardly cleaning all day, but mentally I was replaying things and checking things in my head. So I didn't even get solace in my mind anymore. So I eventually moved out of my mom's house. I felt like her house had mold in it, which I of course caused, and felt that I couldn't be safe and my health couldn't be there. So I moved into a house in Fountain Valley, called the Velardo house, with a best friend, a roommate. And when I was living there, my hope was, because I was away from that mold, that everything would be fine, but it got worse. Majorly worse. It turned into, eventually at its worst, about 16 hours of compulsion. So I had the cleaning, constantly showering, washing my hands, having to buy new sheets weekly, buying new clothes daily, having to clean my washer and dryer just to use it. There was also like a fear of something bad happening to me or those that I love. So I had to do certain rituals, like go to bed by a certain time, 12:45. If I went to bed a minute after, my mom could get sick, I could die. So having these fears of these bad things happening, and just laying in bed, just constantly ruminating about those thoughts. So that led to the depression that came with the OCD. So isolation, not having friends and family around, not even interacting with my roommate. And so having poor mental health, undiagnosed, and being alone was absolutely the worst combination. And so it all hit a head when I finally decided that I was going to take my life. And that was probably the lowest moment for me when it came to just my mental health and just me as a person. So I decided to pull my car into the garage, run the car, and just basically lay there to die. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to obviously breathe, and the exhaust would get in my lungs, and I could finally be at peace. For me, that was the only way out. And although saying it sounds so horrific, at the time, it actually felt like the one time I was gonna have peace in my life. All I remember is being passed out in my car and having somebody banging on my door. And it was my roommate who came home. And I remember being extremely embarrassed and extremely angry at I thought I finally had a solution to all this stuff. It's not just washing your hands, it's not just taking a shower, it's the methodic, minuscule way that you have to do everything. It has to be a certain way, it has to be ritualized, it has to be perfect. And so you could be in the shower washing the same arm over and over and over and over for 20 minutes. I was way lighter than I am now, sometimes kind of like skin and bones because I wasn't eating, and I was drenched in sweat, constantly exhausted, mentally, physically, and tired. So this disorder takes everything out of you and absolutely consumes you. And I was a shell of myself. I do remember the very first appointment I had with this OCD specialist named Karen Pickett, and she read off some, potential information and told me a little bit about OCD and did a couple tests to see if I had it. And I remember breaking down because it was the first time somebody was able to put words into what I was going through. For so long, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite place it. And when she would read to me what OCD was and what the different subtypes were and the different obsessions and rituals, it was the first time that I felt heard and I felt that somebody finally could help me. I remember my very first exposure. I used to have to share a bathroom with my dad and share a shower when I was living with my dad and grandma after the suicide attempt. And because my dad used the same shower, I used to run my shampoo bottle, my conditioner bottle, and my body wash under the shower to clean it off. So my first exposure was I could not run that under water and had to put it in my hands and then put it in my hair, which I thought was contaminated in case my dad touched it. It sounds small, but to me, it felt like I was putting myself in danger, but it was small enough that I was able to push through. And that exposure kind of kicked off 2 years of hard work of fighting back against the OCD. So after that, it was getting my life back together. It was hard, finishing treatment. It felt like I was finally back in the world, and I was going on social media and looking up friends that I hadn't talked to in 6 years and seeing everybody kind of move on without you. But I started to create my own life again. And all that time, every day new challenges came up because I started putting myself in new situations. But with the tools from ERP that I learned with my therapist, I always knew how to handle any situation that came up. So I would say my only kind of roadblock was just this voice in my head from a doctor, somebody I respected, who told me that I was never going to be able to graduate college. And school was sort of something that I didn't really think could happen. I dropped out of community college and just never thought that that was going to be for me. I just felt that I was told it was just not something I could do. So I remember going back to the same community college and coming in with a new fresh mindset with my tools. And I found myself going through class to class until I graduated there, got a 4-year degree, and then went back and got a Master's of Science degree in psychology. And so now I'm a therapist treating OCD and related disorders here in Southern California. And for me, it's just been surreal because being in a room with somebody with OCD and related disorders and helping them get their life back, it reminds me of what the therapist that I worked with, Karen Pickett, was able to do for me. If my story sounds similar to yours and you're suffering with OCD, please get help. I know that we feel like we can handle it on our own. I've been there, I've lived it, but we can't. It is a debilitating disorder that takes everything from you and takes you to your lowest point in your life. Please find somebody who specializes in this disorder, specializes in the treatment, ERP, for this disorder, and get help. You've given up so much of your life to a disorder that has no end, so please go and get the tools so that you can manage it and you can get back to life. Going from some of the lowest points in my life and then using the treatment to get to a point where I'm happy, I live fulfilled, and I look forward to everything that happens in front of me. I'm not a unique case. I'm just somebody that did the work, fought, and got better. And now it's your turn. I hope this inspires you too to get help.